Welcome to the Security Weekly News wrap-up show for the week of 22 March 2020 in the time of plague. Zoombombing, Russian hacker Zuck turns over control to the AIs and free cybersecurity products. All this and more on the Security Weekly News wrap-up.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week, your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. Make sure your team is prepared to fight off the latest cybersecurity threat. IT Pro TV is the resource to keep you and your IT team skills up to date. You can stream IT Pro TV courses live and on demand, so there's no need to send staff to off-site training. Team subscriptions include Pro Portal, so managers have full control over your team's training schedule. Go to itpro.tv/hack-naked and use the code HN30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership. As technology continues to evolve and expand, so have the countless ways our critical systems can be put in jeopardy. Ransomware attacks, misconfiguration, user error, and malicious threat actors, to name a few. As IT infrastructures continue to grow and diversify, how do you ensure stable security? Core Security, a help systems company, provides an analytics-driven, layered approach to security with a portfolio that enables both proactive and reactive responses. With Core Security, you can reduce risk by limiting access, detect upcoming and active threats, test for security weaknesses, and efficiently monitor data for actionable insights. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/core security.
Hello, I'm Doug White from Roger Williams University, your host, and welcome to the Security Weekly News wrap-up show. Let's wrap up all the show topics from this week. On Application Security Weekly number 101, a nice binary number there for you, Mike, Matt, and John had an interview with Adam Hughes, the chief software architect at Scilabs. They were discussing Singularity, which is a container. It's really cool, a container runtime that has full image encryption inside the container, and it was a container designed to be used in a multi-user environment. So that is a really interesting product to me, being hung up on Dockers and all. That's an actual container that was starting to be designed for more than what we've seen in the past. In their second segment, Utsav Sanghani did a tech segment on the benefits of static application security testing and software composition analysis. SAST is a method for mapping open source CVEs and open source licenses in your code, as well as maintaining a repository of approved open source components. He was demonstrating the CodeSite IDE plugin that combines SCA and SAST in one place. This is really important if you're doing open source development stuff, because as more of us start using GitHubs and other open source components, it's really critical that you have a way of managing all of that code that's getting pulled in there, not to mention managing all the CVEs. So you start thinking about how many pieces of open source code you combine into an app and how many CVEs there might be about that stuff. That starts to get a little bit scary. On Business Security Weekly number 167, Jason, Matt, and Paul talked with Jeff Koslow, the deputy CISO at ExtraHop. The segment was about protecting your assets commensurate with their value and how asset and risk management is changing. On Enterprise Security Weekly number 177, Matt and Paul started off with Sumedh Thakar, the Chief Product Officer at Qualys. This is a great segment for you to catch up on about the cybersecurity challenges created by all the new remote workforcing, which all of us are very much aware of. And as you can see, we're all doing that right here. This is really exciting segment. I would encourage you to check it out if you are managing remote users, which you probably are, because pretty much all of us are managing remote users at this point, and all of us are remote users at this point. On the Security Weekly News number 21, Daniel Hampton of Signal Sciences talked with us about log fatigue. Actually, just me. He talked with me about log fatigue and working smarter and not harder, managing all your devices and your logs and your components internally. A nice segment there. Daniel is a senior technical account manager at Signal Sciences. On Security and Compliance Weekly number 22, Jeff, Matt, Josh, and Scott interviewed David Walter from RSA, and they were talking about the shift in enterprise from compliance-based focused initiative to risk-based initiatives. We can only hope. All of that, of course, being about the need to move away from ticking boxes that say, I have a control for this, to actually analyzing the risk that's associated with given things. So a lot of content about that this week, if you want to check out some of those compliance things. A second interview on this show with Kevin Haynes, who's a chief privacy officer at the Nemours Foundation. They were talking about security program initiatives and administrative challenges in security programs with that Children's Healthcare Foundation. Again, more on security versus compliance versus risk. Again, a good one to catch up on. Finally, on Paul's Security Weekly number 645 last night, a bonus segment and tips for working from home. So as all of us are working at home, it was a pretty good show to check out. The show must go on and so on. And so some great tips about recording, listening, how to survive working at home if you're not used to doing that kind of thing. But suddenly you're expected to sound and look great on camera, like some of us have been doing all along. My own personal setup, since I wasn't on that show, I should have been, but I couldn't work out the timing. Right now I'm using an MXL studio mic, and sometimes I use a Blue Yeti. I use a Complete Audio 6 Mark II interface, which is the interface to the computer, and a Logitech 920 1080 webcam. I do have a lot of DMX LED lights and a DMX mixer, but that's probably overkill. But it sure is fun to play with all those good things and write them off your taxes because, hey, I need them for podcasting. If I can figure out a way to work my guitars in there, I'm going to really be happy. My biggest challenge here in the office is to keep down stray noises like telephones or my neighbors deciding that they're going to use leaf blowers in the middle of something I'm recording, and or just ambient noise that's in the background like my computer fans and things like that do get picked up on high quality microphones. So noise gating and all that kind of stuff. My biggest weakness is I hate headphones and I love monitor speakers, and my big giant monitor speakers sitting over here do tend to cause problems with your microphone. So headphones so you don't get feedback and echoes. And of course there was news this week, but my favorite threat of the week is going to have to continue to be remote compliance. COVID-19 continues to push the fortunate of us who actually can work remotely. And for many of all these new remote workers, the Chinese wall between working at work and being at home has been breached. For some of us, well, we've been doing that for years, so we're kind of used to the idea that we bring work home and that work is at home and so on. But suddenly all those TPS reports you've been filling out are laying around on the living room floor. The VPN won't connect, so just throw down the sticks and go for it. Or in-house meetings are being broadcast over the house audio system. Not to mention hearing one meeting going on during another meeting from another party in the house. When you hear someone's wife shouting, I don't know, they've mutated beyond all recovery. Well, so much for this dimension. You start to realize it's an OSINT gold mine out there for people that are picking up all these meetings that are being published on YouTube, on all sorts of other platforms, many of which have never been used that much before. And suddenly between Zoom, Skype, YouTube, et cetera, people are recording all sorts of things. Scammers are heavily targeting employees at home. They're working without a net maybe because they're connected to their home systems instead of through your heavily secured system. So take the time to advise your users and remember they're new to this and they're out of toilet paper. So it may get ugly in general. And top news from all the shows. Cybersecurity vendors are stepping up to offer free products to help as everyone is forced to work at home. This particular article and several more I attached to it on the wiki talked about some of the many companies who are now offering their platforms out free to various and sundry groups, including educators and healthcare, and some even just for corporate. One login, KnowBe4, which is a course on home security. SANS has their security awareness work from home deployment kit available. Tenable Nessus Essentials is a network scanner. GuruCool is a 30-day free cloud service. Nozomi is upping their support levels to 24/7 for free. Cisco has put out unlimited users on Duo Security if using that. And many other products like 1Password is now allowing 6 free months on their business system. Cloudflare Teams is free for 6 months. Reacta is free for 4 months with their PC security tools just to healthcare. Emisoft has free anti-ransomware tools to healthcare. Sension is providing Endpoint 360 free for 6 months to new customers. Some of this sounds a little bit opportunistic at the same time because, it's kind of like 6 months free, like, let's get you started. Virtru is providing data protection tools for free with unlimited licenses to K-12 schools, and Dashlane has 3 free months of its password manager. So lots of free tools for everyone who's trying to get things up and running safely, particularly entities and organizations like healthcare and K-12, which traditionally don't have a lot of those kind of things available and no budget for those kind of things. A lot of people got told to go online in the last 2 weeks, but that didn't include budget to go online. So we've seen a lot of that. In fact, one of my Zoom licenses got taken away because they said the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and go ahead and buy one yourself. So I was like, okay, well, I can afford to do that, but not everybody can. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and others have sent home all their moderators amid the shutdown in California and elsewhere. And of course, basically the whole world is shut down, so who knows? But basically, AI is now running the ship while the captain and all the officers are down on the planet. That was always one of my gripes with Star Trek, was like, let's just take the whole upper management organization down to the planet. They did that better on Next Generation. Zuck said that all this may result in more false positives on Facebook, so things being taken down that really should stay up. So far, there's not been a lot of reporting on the impact of this decision. I did see one story, I'll mention it, but I didn't put it in the wiki because I didn't really validate it, that they were not seeing nearly as many coronavirus stories on Facebook. Might have been a conspiracy story, not sure. But we'll see just how well all this AI handles Russian troll bots and maybe real Russian trolls, et cetera. It's a battle royale on social media, at least among AI. The FBI took down Deer.io and arrested the administrator, Kirill Viktorovich Firsov, who is allegedly a Russian hacker. Deer.io, if you're not familiar with it, has been operating pretty much since, I think, about 2013, and claims to have over 24,000 active shops that are selling pretty much anything you want to sell. But primarily, Deer.io focused on selling personal information that had been collected from hacks, break-ins, ransomwares, etc. Virtual stores on Deer.io offer a variety of compromised information from U.S. companies, international financials. Pretty much, if there was a breach, they probably are selling that data. Deer.io has gone so far as to offer a turnkey storefront, which will allow for you to put up your own sales and services. So you can provide whatever you want to provide on there for about 800 rubles a month, which is around $12.50 per the time of the article. Firsov was arrested by the FBI in early March in New York City. He has an arraignment hearing on April 16th, but this is not a good time to get arrested because a lot of those things have been suspended indefinitely. So who knows when his arraignment hearing will actually occur, but I'm sure we'll have the story. Google reported they'd seen a large drop in nation-state sponsored attacks on users in 2019 due to their new anti-phishing measures on both the app side for phones as well as on their PC and web and Mac-based browsers. So they said over 25% reduction in alerts had occurred since 2018. They did not provide any information in the article about which nation states were actually doing the attacks, but I guess they somewhat know. LastPass, 1Password, and other password managers, the big five of password management vaulting services, which are, according to this article, Dashlane, Keeper, LastPass, 1Password, and RoboForm, were analyzed in a paper by Michael Carr and Simak Shahandashti, got it, of the University of York. I did attach the academic paper to the wiki. This paper, which was actually several years old, found that all of these tools had Chrome browser extensions and Android apps, which all could result in various compromises. The companies responded that these studies were old and that most of these flaws, although I noticed they almost all qualified that with most, in the paper had been fixed. It's definitely a story you might want to check up on if you do use a password manager, which you should. I put a link to that original research paper, which was tracking things from back, really almost 3 years ago now, but it was a current story about this issue. Still waiting on my invitation for this, folks, but a cyber justice league has been founded to allow organizations to team up to fight COVID-19 hacks and phishing. I'm kind of waiting on cyber avengers myself, but, Justice League, come on. A private invite was sent out to various people to join the Cyber Threat Intelligence League. And this went out to incident responders, intel experts, and other cybersecurity experts. The initial focus by this group is on helping hospitals, as they have been particularly targeted by ransomware and hackers while they're at their most vulnerable. So thanks out there to Black Hat people who have been targeting hospitals who are actually trying to save all of us. And Black Hats are not immune to COVID-19 unless they know something we don't. So you might want to lay off the hospitals. Chubb, which is one of the largest insurers in the world, may have been infiltrated by Maze ransomware. Maze, the actual ransomware service, claims that they have been able to extract personally identifiable information and will be releasing that information shortly if ransom is not paid. Apparently, the information is about executives and management inside of Chubb. No indication of exactly what that information is or when they're planning to release it or how much ransom they're trying to collect, but I would presume it's pretty large. And a follow-on to the stories about privacies and threats to privacies that we were doing in the last couple of weeks due to COVID-19, Unacast, I guess that's how you say it, it's spelled with an A, Unacast, a company that was already collecting and analyzing GPS location data from cell phones, began grading areas of the United States. They produced a county-by-county report on the behavior of users in those locations related to social distancing. Now, this analysis was based on the total travel as a rough, and they called it a rough index. Washington, D.C. scored the best, and Wyoming scored the worst. Now, as a statistician, this sounds like some pretty limited analysis, in my humble opinion. Basically, as a former citizen of the state of Colorado, you have to go a lot further in Wyoming, which is next to Colorado, if you're not familiar with the map of the United States. In Colorado, you have to travel a lot further just to get to about anything. I mean, there are people whose mailbox is miles away from their actual home. So if you're living in Wyoming, you may actually be doing a lot more traveling than you might have to do in D.C. if you live in an apartment building. And you could still, and of course, being in a social distancing environment in Wyoming is a lot easier since it may be 10 miles to the next, living soul. This is probably a preliminary view, though, of how cell phone data is going to be used in future epidemics and by epidemiologists. So a lot of those stories that we saw in the last couple of weeks about, different countries like Israel using your cell phone data to track people's contacts and who they were near and who might be infected, all that may be coming back around pretty soon. So keep an eye on that. And again, it depends on where you come down on that side of the privacy argument. Finally, there is a term for those sometimes annoying, outrageous, and just plain awful interruptions in your online meetings. Zoombombing is actually a thing now. A lot of new meeting admins, read teachers in particular, have been experiencing what happens when you allow juvenile types, you know who you are, into public meetings, unmoderated meetings, and just generally open chat space. Chipotle was apparently forced to end a public Zoom chat due to a user continuing logging in even when they got banned and putting up porn on their screen feed. So if you're moderating, remember to mute, filter, control your users. And if you don't know how to do that, I did post a link to the Zoom Help Center on the wiki that has an actual instructions on how to host and how to use the host controls in your meeting. All the other platforms like Skype and meetings and all these other platforms everyone's using have similar instructions and similar controls to allow you to prevent people from doing that kind of stuff. And that is the news wrap up for the week of 22 March 2020 in the time of plague. I'm Doug White from the already online cybersecurity program at Roger Williams University. We were online before it was cool. We'll see you next week with more shows and more security news.